What is up, everybody? It's Nico from the EHG community coming to you with the first ever EHG podcast episode. Now, I know I have done a lot of podcast episodes, which I'm probably going to get rid of them pretty soon, but I will be having, different guests, and sometimes in the episodes, I will just be doing this podcast by myself. As you guys know, as I said, like my channel is based off of like gaming content. It's based off of things like, based on gaming. But this podcast would just like be involving things like not just gaming, but movies, anything of music, and anything of like media. Anything of politics, unless it has something to do with gaming, will not be added into this podcast because I believe gaming is a way of staying out of politics or staying out of the real life issues that a lot of people have. So let me get into this actual conversation here. Now, for the first episode that we're doing here right now, it is about things like Overwatch, especially with Overwatch and from the state that it is before, like especially from beta or alpha to the state that it is now. So I have been playing Overwatch since beta. I believe it came out at around, I believe, what, like 2014, probably like something like I would say a little bit earlier than that. So I gotta really check that out because it's some type of information on that. When it first came out, it was a pretty interesting game. It was pretty competitive. I liked the way that it was competitive. Um, excuse me. Wow, I was. It was way too early. It was 2016 that it came out, and with things of like the characters, the gameplay style, and like the designs of the characters, the levels, the abilities, it came out to be a top rating game. It was a game that was absolutely top rated. It ended up winning, I believe, game of the year at one point, or best multiplayer. I just that's the possibility of that. With things because I'm looking at it right now. It won the game award of game of the year, game award of best multiplayer game, best ongoing game award for best esports game, and causing things like making the Overwatch League and bringing different teams with the Overwatch League. Um, Back then it was a game that was bringing a lot of people there to its platform. I was playing it on the PS4. People were playing on PC, Xbox, and PS4, and people were asking for it on the Switch, which right now you can actually get it on the Switch. Now, from the beginning, the game was very awkward to play at one point because of the fact that the nerfing and buffing from back then to now is absolutely horrendous. It goes all over the place to a major extent because of the fact that it's easy basic math. So why I say it's easy basic math is because in order to really do the nerfing and buffing, you really need a certain like knowledge of math. Especially, I think you go all the way to possibly geometry or even a little bit further. But developers have to have things like their own, I would say, like their own knowledge up to pre-calc. And with me wanting to try to be a game developer, I had to have a major knowledge in math. And with that, I was way off. And I ended up switching to game art since I like drawing, and I wanted to switch to game art on that. So that was my major change of that. So the game gets very difficult to add in all those things because of the fact that what game developers do, they have to have, like as I said, the knowledge up to pre-calc, and they have to learn things such as C++ and things for coding, which makes it a very extremely hard job to get used to. Now, why I say it's very easy to nerf and buff these guys or nerf and buff these this game is because of the fact that in order to nerf and buff, you have to look at many different aspects, input and output of certain characters, certain health levels of the characters, like how much health the character has, the distance it shoots, the spread of their guns, the rapid fire of their guns, the number of clips. And the thing is, with things like that, it was all over a place to a point where it was very unbalanced from, lower levels such as bronze to GM. And it got to a point where major nerfing and buffing had to go through, and it was unreasonable. For instance, things that were very unreasonable that need to be changed was the fact that, Junkrat was doing a lot of damage to his own self, so they needed to nerf his actual damage to himself to a point where he wasn't taking damage, and they needed to make sure that, he was able to play. There were also like a point where Reaper was unstoppable, but then he at one point he was also unplayable because of the fact of his teleport, and he wasn't able to heal himself. So that's why they switched to his lifesteal. Characters like I would say characters like, Tracer were hard to kill left and right. And then, like characters like Genji had like the most overpowered kit. And, people didn't really go ahead and do anything of that change. So they had to do major nerfing and buffing. And things like that shouldn't really be too difficult if you're taking a look at the game. The only thing that would be difficult is how many things you have to nerf and buff, which I guess that's what's the major difficulty out of it. But um but with that, let me go ahead and put another issue with Overwatch from the beginning to the end. Um when Overwatch popped in, it was, every player had the capability of playing whoever they choose. Now, that was like from the beginning. You can have like two widows, you can have like two soldiers, three divas, and everything. But then now it got to a point where, hey, you can't do that now. You have to have one of each character. And this game revolves a lot on counters, and so you had to be able to study the counters. And with studying that stuff, it was very, very important to do so. A lot of the things like, the counters for Genji, counters for Diva, counters for Winston, counters for Reinhardt, and so on and so forth. Now, when people had to study that, it was, I don't understand. I guess it made it a lot more of a competitive game. Like it was just more like free at the beginning, and then more of the changes made it a lot more competitive, especially with the change of only choosing one character, locking out certain characters if you already got 2 DPS, or if you already chose a specific character, then you just extremely lock them out. Now, with that, it was free to a point where you can have like 3 DPS also, you can have like 3 tanks and 1 healer. So now, where it is in role queue, you only have 2 of each, or if you have open queue, you can have whatever roles you want, but you still can only choose one character. Which led to people wanting to main specific characters. Like I am Moira main, a Zenyatta main. I main Zarya, Roadhog, Diva, and on DPS I main Ashe, Soldier, Reaper, Sombra, and I would say someone else. I would say Symmetra, but Symmetra is not one I usually play that much. It's mostly Soldier, Sombra, or Reaper at most. Now, the game starts changing up as soon as more characters came out. Anna, Sombra, Moira, Echo, Orisa, Baptiste, Sigma, and Wrecking Ball. It started changing up things where nerfing and buffing went all over the place again. Now, I think the problem with nerfing and buffing is just that they worry a little too much about what like the GMs or the top 500 or even the league think about. Which, in my opinion, I think that's not fair. I think you have to look at it as an overall for all roles and all ranks. And I just don't get it of how certain characters haven't been nerfed yet or buffed yet. For instance, I don't understand why Genji has not been majorly nerfed, because Genji has the most overpowered kit in the game, especially now. The guy can be able to deflect 40 plus items, especially molten core, which is absolutely ridiculous. Be able to climb walls, double jump, spread, and like with a spread shot, a regular tri burst attack, and literally have the cooldown on his dash. If he kills somebody with it, it cools down, and then he can do it again. It shows that the kit is very, very destructive. And when things like Brigitte came out, because Brigitte majorly did things like counter Genjis and Tracers, people were like pissed. They were massively upset. They wanted to go ahead and make sure Brigitte was taken out of the game. It got to a point when they were throwing death threats of the voice actor, which makes no sense, which is absolutely ridiculous. And this is absolutely like the dumbest reason to literally go ahead and throw death threats to someone. You should never throw death threats to a voice actor or an actor in general, because of the fact that they're just doing their job. There's nothing they can do about it. They're doing their job. You should not be doing stuff like that. But the Overwatch community happened to do that. Now, it gets a lot more worse when things like, there are toxic players from, I would say bronze up. GM gets worse. There's some people who are massively racist, sexist, and even throw games on purpose, and even do things like Smurf accounts. And Smurf accounts are a terrible thing in video games right now. And a lot of people would disagree with that, but let me put this in perspective. You have a main account of GM. You're in the GM rank of Overwatch right now. And you make a Smurf account and you are placed in Plat or Diamond. Why is it that you won't take it seriously when you're in the Platinum area or in the Diamond area, but you'll take it seriously in the GM area? It's competitive gaming. It's in the competitive scene. When you do that and you don't take it seriously and you're like, oh, I don't have to win this game. It's your SR. I don't really care. It's just my Smurf account. Then you're just throwing away SR for people, and you're making them lose the game to the point where they do not have the chance of climbing back up at times, because people don't want to go ahead and help out. People, don't even help them climb in any type of way. And with that, it goes to a point where, you should not even be having a Smurf account. So what's the purpose of a Smurf account? If you are going to also complain while on a Smurf account, saying people are bad, certain people are this or that, why are you here? Why are you in Plat and Diamond? Why are you not stuck in the GM area where you're supposed to be? That's my issue with Smurf accounts. But with the Smurf accounts, with the toxicity, this makes Overwatch one of the most toxic gaming communities in gaming right now. In my opinion, it is the most toxic gaming community in gaming right now. And I've done things like play PUBG, like League of Legends, and even things like freaking Counter-Strike, even to a point where, like, right now, even Valorant is pretty toxic itself. Call of Duty can be toxic. And I'm sorry, but Overwatch has to take the cake on the most toxic. It goes to a point where, like, people who play characters, and they automatically think just because if you're a woman playing a game, you're a Mercy main. Like, not every woman plays Mercy. Some women play Reaper, some women play Soldier, some women play Hanzo, some women play Anna, some women play Zenyatta or Roadhog. And I know a couple of mains who play McCree, who are women, who are female, and they do a lot better than most of the men that pop in. They do a lot better than a lot of people that pop in. It gets to a point where it's like that. You hear the constant uses of N words or or racial terms because somebody's not playing a certain character you want, or they're not doing certain things that you think they're supposed to be doing, but then you realize that you're not doing as much either. And it gets worse and worse and worse. And I could tell, and like, especially as a person who does the competitive scene and who has literally 37 episodes of Overwatch toxic behavior. Just of recently, I caught one guy who was extremely toxic. He was constantly being killed left and right in Sigma, then complaining about the heals, which I called him out for being a bad Sigma and a bad Roadhog in return. And he ended up being extremely toxic by sending me messages on PlayStation because of the fact that he wasn't doing his job. I was doing my job with gold healing, of course. I was definitely healing people as much as I can. But then he wants to find someone to blame. That's what the issue was. And then some of his friends even got to a point where they commented on my video saying that I was toxic because I called them out for being toxic. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. I even put that on a video where I was responding to them. And yes, you know what? There's no such thing. If you think that calling out a toxic person for being toxic is just as toxic as that person that was causing the toxicity, then I don't know. Your morals have to be extremely skewed. Like, they're pretty bad. I don't know what you're thinking. I would really rethink everything in my life for that. Why do you think like people like YouTubers like OG Pure or GS Raider, or even when like a couple of other people who do YouTube go ahead and put like, like YouTubers, like, or even like Overwatch competitive players, toxic, like especially toxic Overwatch competitive players on blast because of the fact that it happens. It's a real thing that actually happens. Like, it happens with, as I said, like a couple of YouTubers. I'm gonna give them a little bit of shout out, to them, but I see a couple of their content. Um, People like OG Pure, FTK Computer, Clutch Craziness. Um, there's a whole bunch of them. Even I seen like one where there's a bunch of toxic players on people like Lieutenant Eddie's YouTube as well, which he stopped playing Overwatch majorly because it was just like, got too stale, got too terrible. Which that's what the state is now. It's extremely terrible because they don't know what they're doing, and it's just like it gets to a point where there's a whole bunch of videos. If you type in Overwatch toxic, there's a whole bunch of videos there. Even somehow, I don't know. Some people end up finding my videos and seeing it. Like, I don't know how my videos get popped up there all of a sudden. So let me go ahead and take a look at it. So my latest one was part 37, which was the Toxic Sigma, which I was talking about. 35 views, which is pretty decent from based on my other ones. So let me go ahead and check out the other ones I have. There's stuff like toxic people leaving the game, toxic people going to a point where they just throw people, where they just get on the chat and they just talk a lot of shit. There was one with a Sigma, 113 views, 59 views from a toxic Hanzo, toxic Roadhog, 31 views, toxic hamster or wrecking ball, 25, 28, 22 views, like here and there, even 79 views. There are certain views that I get here and there pretty decent. 139 views, I get 114 views, and it gets to a point where it's like, you know what, this is getting ridiculous. This is very bad for the community. And then the problem is they don't address it. They don't really do anything about it. But at one point, it makes for good content. It makes for definitely good content. You have a lot of people, doing that toxic bullshit. And guess what? You're put on YouTube, and then people are like, "Oh, you only have like 500 subscribers, this many viewers." But if it bothers you so much, then why are you being so toxic? If you're saying it doesn't bother you, then why are you so upset of me putting my content on YouTube about you? Like just recently, I was watching a video of OG Pure, and with that, he had content of someone who was massively racist, and his friend got called out for supporting that. And when they found out they were on stream, guess what? They just everything just turned left. They were like, oh no, well, I didn't know he was racist. And like, no, 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 no. You know he was an asshole. That's what it was. And my problem so far is that, like, with Overwatch being as fun as it is, because I love playing Overwatch because it has a major thing with it, whereas like I can't really stop playing it because I've played from the beginning to now. Like, I think the game is well done. I think the design is well done. I think the characters are amazing. I just think it can be better with nerfing and buffing, and the community should be put in check with some of the attitude that they have and some of the attitudes that they bring, especially with that. But here's one thing that now is a major issue with things such as, Overwatch. So with Overwatch right now, we do have the new crossplay with it, which is now you could crossplay with PS4, Xbox, and Switch players, or you could even add in PC players. Now, that went down the shitter because of the fact that it was one of the most terrible ideas. Crossplay is not an idea. It should not be an idea for gaming now. It should be tested first and then probably brought into the future. Um, I don't see the reason of why having crossplay should be a thing. For PC to console, I think things for like console, Xbox, and Switch should have their own thing, and then PC should have its own server. Um, I'll tell you why. Because of the fact that PC has certain advantages and console has certain advantages as well, and that doesn't make the game any type of fair. Secondly, with PC, there's a lot more hacking than what there is on console. There's like when it comes to PC, there is 10 times, probably 20 times more hacking in games than what it is on console. Aimbots are probably more of a thing on PC than when it is on console, but I've seen aimbots on console as well. Another thing with the crossplay, it stopped a lot of people from properly doing things like voice channels or team chat, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think a lot of things like texting Timmys or like taunting Tommies. I call them taunting Tommies. That's not really a thing. It's just my thing. But texting Timmys has been a thing in Overwatch. Texting Timmys have been like a major issue. That just texting their issues with like the characters, but they don't have the decency to get their asses on the fucking chat. I think that's a major issue. I think with that now, I think Overwatch has to force in microphone usage or force in team chat. It's because of things like that that makes it a big issue. Um, I don't see the problem of having the text chat, but it makes it a lot more difficult for console players because of the fact that they can't use keyboard or even mouse for the game. So that's a major problem. So I really think that the chat box or the text box should be taken out. I think people should be forced into the voice chat because the voice chat will promote of the fact of a lot better communication towards the game, especially communication towards your team. If you need to make some shots or calls out, then you can go ahead and do that. That's why you have like things like awards like shot caller, uh, good teammate, sportsmanship, and stuff like that. And they need to make sure like that's a better thing. Excuse me. And one major issue with that is just that the fact that people don't see that. People don't see that situation. People don't understand that. I don't get why people don't understand that. It just bothers me to a major extent. Um I like some people don't want to put in the headset because like, oh, there's toxic players, which is understandable. But then there's also a mute button. There's also the fact that you can just like, at one point just mute the player, which you are allowed to do so. But then at one point you could also just be an adult and ignore it. That's what it is. Like sometimes people just start yelling in my ear, and I'm just ignoring it because I'm doing what I need to do. Plus, it makes for good content. That's just for my thing. What one major thing that I also hate is the fact that they put profiles on private. Uh, it wasn't like that from the beginning. It should have stayed on private. I don't see the reason behind that. Having profiles private, it sounds ridiculous. I think people should have the right to see what other people are playing, because of the fact that why are people who have like 200 or 300, probably 400 plus hours on Hanzo playing, a character like Widow where they only have like 30 minutes on it? I don't see that. I don't see the reason behind that. I would rather have people know what they're playing, or playing a character that they know 100%, than actually switching to a character that they don't know jack shit about. So that's a major thing for it. Um, Another thing that I have, like, that's changed from Overwatch then to now is the fact that, I believe that the Overwatch League are now taking their shit seriously. Back then, for when it started, it was kind of funny when people said that Mercy wasn't punishable. It kind of make me question whether or not, like, these guys were actual pros, because all you really need to do is just at one point pay like a certain entry fee, and then there you go, you got yourself a team for Overwatch. There was that, and also with that, um it gets to a point where, like you see like people like XQC, who is, a in my opinion, a sack of shit. Fuck you, XQC. And fuck a lot of the freaking players from Fuel. Fuck a lot of the players that actually got banned because of a lot of issues. So let me go ahead and bring up the Overwatch League ban list, and it gets to a point where it's very, 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 very long of a list, that teams were banned, players were banned, and there were many reasons for that. So let me go ahead and bring up the players that were usually banned. So there are many different teams here. There are team like zones. There are team zones. There are other ones for like small, like, different season like contenders. There were some that were actually in the Overwatch League, and it gets to a point where you see this whole list. These are people that were suspended. These were people who were banned, and right now they're currently banned right now. Um, right now these are especially like people from like countries like, China, from the US, from the UK, from many different places, even Japan. It even gets to a point where it's like, why? There are players, like, even with the names here, there are teams that get suspended because of, like, the actual contenders that actually do something like that. Like, for instance, it shows at the end there are teams that or there are players that get banned off of the actual league because of the fact they're account sharing, and these are all the punishments that that they got. They just got like suspended for a couple of games, and with that they were also like showing like the punishment for what they did. Uh, like, as I said, like, they I would say like the reason why they actually got banned in the first place. Most of them were for account sharing. There was some for cheating, which I don't understand. Account boosting, which is very bad. There were certain situations where I believe a couple of teams in the actual Overwatch League actually got, I believe, in trouble because of that. There were some that were throwing the matches for toxicity, and that was from Korea. That was from like big teams like the Los Angeles Gladiators. There was major teams like I believe Shanghai Dragons. They got that. There were Dallas Fuel, which I say fuck Dallas Fuel, and some of the players on it. Like for here, OGE from Dallas Fuel and XQC 100% fuck XQC. I don't like XQC. You can kiss my ass, XQC. That's my opinion on it. Um, with that, you got XQC like suspended and fined. Some people were suspended indefinitely, suspended for 5 games, 3 games, 2 games. There was one for Toronto Defiant, which was Neko, which is selling an account and obstructing leave officials' investigation. So when he was caught for that, he was trying to stop them from finding that out. There was a bunch of them. There was the Fran who was throwing and grieving in ranked games, which was absolutely ridiculous. I don't know why people would do that. Some people were suspended for 10 games. There's negative speech, win trading, and account buying or selling, which 5 people actually were kicked out of that. A whole team was suspended because they disbanded during a tournament. There was one for match fixing and authorized dual registration and unsportsmanlike conduct, and these are all like different people. There's like all different ones that just like you have the major names, like you have Philadelphia Fusion, you have like Dallas Fuel, you have things like Hangzhou Spark, you have Boston Uprising, you have Florida Mayhem, which a lot of actual people got kicked off that team because of accusations of sexual harassment, which is very, very wrong, which is kind of weird. I mean, like, it boggles my mind that people who actually have the privilege to make money by competing in game competition or tournaments or even streaming take advantage of this, and then they lose this on purpose, and then they wonder why this happens. So that's like from the beginning of Overwatch, and then right now there's not too many bans because of the fact that people now know like the punishments that happen. So like in conclusion for this, I think like Overwatch now like is a little bit better, but I think it's gonna go downhill because of the fact of the crossplay. The crossplay is a terrible idea for it right now. I think a lot of things like adding in players from different areas is a terrible idea. But otherwise, I think it's gotten better from the beginning, but it's still probably one of the most, or if not the most toxic community in gaming right now. But in the comments below, let me know what you guys think about this whole entire podcast. Oh, excuse me. I'm gonna be doing more podcasts with different topics. I'm gonna be doing things like with having like different guests. Sometimes the guests from like the Immortals, guests from the Discord channel, or probably like guests in general. But yeah, that's what I really do my podcast on. As I said, there's gotta be different topics from gaming, music, possibly like even things like wrestling or movies. Because especially me, I love wrestling. As I said, there won't be political talk unless it has something to do with gaming or any of the media, like in regards to like music or movies. But yeah, thank you for watching this first podcast. Definitely subscribe to the EHG community. Definitely turn on notifications when we get new streams and new videos set out. Definitely join us on our Facebook group, our Discord channel. Make sure to go ahead and check out our merchandise, and make sure to follow the Liking Horde on Twitter. But this is Nico from the EHG community. Stay tuned for another episode of the EHG podcast, and remember that there's always something amazing on the horizon.